The jacket still smelled faintly of his daughter's strawberry shampoo when Marcus draped it over the trembling woman's shoulders. He didn't know her name, didn't know she'd run 3 miles in a wedding dress, didn't know that beneath the mascara-streaked makeup and torn veil, she was carrying secrets that would change both their lives forever. All he knew was that someone needed help, and helping was what his late wife had taught him to do, even when life had taken everything else away. It was one of those October evenings when the temperature drops without warning, when the sun disappears behind the skyline and suddenly your breath becomes visible in the air. Marcus had just picked up his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, from her piano lesson when he spotted her, a figure in white, huddled against the brick wall of a closed coffee shop, shaking so violently he could see it from across the parking lot. "Daddy, why is that lady wearing a princess dress?" Emma's voice cut through his thoughts, her small hand pressing against the car window. Marcus pulled into a parking space, his instincts as both a father and a decent human being overriding any hesitation. The woman looked up as he approached, her eyes wide with something between fear and exhaustion. She couldn't have been more than 30, with dark hair plastered to her face and a wedding dress that had seen better days. The hem was caked with mud, the delicate lace torn in several places. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Marcus kept his distance, aware that a strange man approaching might be the last thing she needed. "You look like you could use some help." She opened her mouth, but only a sob came out. That's when he noticed the bruises beginning to form on her wrists, the way she held one arm protectively across her body. Without another word, Marcus shrugged off his jacket, the navy blue windbreaker he'd worn to every one of Emma's soccer games, and held it out. "Here, you're freezing." The woman stared at the jacket like it was a life preserver thrown to a drowning person. When she finally reached for it, her hands were ice cold, her fingers trembling as she pulled it around her shoulders. The jacket swallowed her thin frame, and for a moment she just stood there breathing. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw. "You have no idea what this means." Marcus nodded toward his car where Emma's curious face was pressed against the window. "I've got my daughter with me, but there's a diner 2 blocks from here. How about I buy you a cup of coffee? Get you warmed up? No pressure, no questions. You just look like you could use a safe place to sit for a minute." Something in her expression cracked then, like a dam finally giving way. She nodded, wrapping the jacket tighter around herself. The diner was one of those timeless places that existed in every American town, with red vinyl booths and a waitress who'd seen everything and judged nothing. Marcus ordered hot chocolate for Emma, coffee for himself, and looked at the woman across the booth. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought, maybe 26 or 27, with the kind of beauty that comes from genuine features rather than artifice. "I'm Marcus," he said simply. "This is Emma. You don't have to tell us anything you don't want to." The woman wrapped her hands around the coffee mug the waitress had brought, as if trying to absorb every bit of its warmth. "Sarah," she said finally. "My name is Sarah." Emma, with the directness only children possess, asked the question Marcus wouldn't. "Were you a bride today?" Sarah's laugh was bitter and broken. "I was supposed to be." The story came out in pieces, punctuated by long silences and sips of coffee that seemed to give her courage. She'd been with Derek for 3 years, engaged for 1. He was charming, successful, attentive. Everything had seemed perfect until it wasn't. The controlling behavior had started small, so small she'd convinced herself it was love, not possession. Who he allowed her to see, what she could wear, where she could work. "I told myself it would get better after the wedding," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That once we were married, once he felt secure, he'd relax. But this morning, 3 hours before the ceremony, I found out he'd been tracking my phone for months. Had cameras in our apartment I didn't know about. Had convinced my family I was unstable, depressed, that I needed him to take care of me." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Emma had moved to sit beside Sarah, her small hand resting on the woman's arm in that innocent way children offer comfort. "My sister pulled me aside before the ceremony," Sarah continued. She'd found messages on Derek's computer, emails to his friends about how once we were married, I'd finally be his completely, how I wouldn't be able to leave. It was like reading a stranger's plans to kidnap someone. Except the someone was me, and I'd almost walked right into it. "So you ran," Marcus said quietly. "So I ran." Sarah touched the torn hem of her dress. Right out of the church, through the reception hall, past 200 confused guests, and I just kept running. I didn't have my phone, my purse, nothing. Just this dress and the terrible realization that I'd almost married my own prison guard. The diner had filled with the dinner crowd, but their booth felt like an island, a small space where honesty could exist without judgment. Marcus thought about his own wife, Jennifer, who died 2 years ago from cancer. How she'd spent her last months making him promise to teach Emma that kindness was never weakness, that helping others was what gave life meaning. "You did the right thing," Marcus said. Running took more courage than staying ever would have. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. "But now what?" "I can't go back to my apartment. Derek has keys. My family thinks I'm crazy for leaving him. I have $12 in the pocket of this ridiculous dress and nowhere to go." Marcus glanced at Emma, who was watching Sarah with the kind of fierce protectiveness she usually reserved for injured animals. His daughter nodded as if she could read his mind. "Look," Marcus said, pulling out his phone, "I have a friend who runs a women's shelter. They specialize in helping people in situations exactly like yours. They can provide a safe place to stay, legal help, counseling, everything you need, and it's completely confidential." He made the call right there, speaking quietly with Linda, who he'd known since high school. She'd opened the shelter after her own sister had barely escaped an abusive marriage. Within 10 minutes it was arranged. They had a bed, clean clothes, and a counselor who could see Sarah that evening. "I don't know how to thank you," Sarah said as Marcus drove her to the shelter, Emma dozing in the back seat. "You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people are better than you think," Marcus replied. "They just need to see someone who needs help." At the shelter, Linda met them at the door, her warm smile immediately putting Sarah at ease. As Sarah turned to give Marcus back his jacket, he shook his head. "Keep it," he said. "Consider it a loan until you're back on your feet. Then you can pass it on to someone else who needs it." 6 months later, Marcus was running late to pick up Emma from school when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Marcus, this is Sarah from the diner. I know this might seem strange, but I was hoping I could meet you for coffee. I have something for you." They met at the same diner, but Sarah was transformed. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her eyes clear and bright. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, and when she smiled, it reached all the way to her eyes. "I wanted to return this," she said, sliding his jacket across the table. It had been professionally cleaned and mended, where Emma had torn it on a fence last summer. "And I wanted to show you this." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of herself in scrubs, standing in front of a hospital. "I went back to nursing school, something I'd given up because Derek said it would take too much time away from him. I just finished my first rotation." "Sarah, that's incredible," Marcus said, genuinely amazed. "There's more." She pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check made out to Linda's shelter for $5,000. "My grandmother left me some money years ago. Derek had convinced me to sign it over to a joint investment account he controlled. The shelter's lawyer helped me get it back. This is the first installment of what I'm donating. I'm going to help other women the way you and Linda helped me." Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. "You did this yourself, Sarah. I just gave you a jacket." "You gave me more than that," she said firmly. "You gave me proof that good people still exist, that not everyone wants something from you, that sometimes kindness is just kindness. On the worst day of my life, when I thought I'd lost everything, you reminded me that humanity still existed." She reached across the table and took his hand. "Your wife must have been an amazing woman to raise a man like you." "She was," Marcus said softly, "and she would have done exactly what I did. Probably would have done it better." "There's something else," Sarah said, a slight hesitation in her voice. "The shelter needs volunteers, people to help with fundraising, community outreach, that sort of thing. I know you're busy with Emma, but I thought maybe if you had time, you might want to be involved. You have a gift for seeing people who need help." Marcus thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I'd like that." And I think Emma would too. She's been asking about you. Over the next year, Marcus became a regular volunteer at the shelter. Emma came with him sometimes, playing with the children while their mothers rebuilt their lives. Sarah finished nursing school and started working in the ER, but she still volunteered every weekend. One evening, as they were organizing donations, Sarah said something that stayed with Marcus long after. You know what I learned from all this? That the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best people. That sometimes losing everything is how we find out what we're really made of. And that a single act of kindness, a jacket given to a stranger, can change the entire trajectory of someone's life. Marcus smiled, thinking of Jennifer, of the values she'd insisted he pass on to Emma. My wife used to say that we're all just walking each other home, that life is hard enough without making it harder for each other. She was right, Sarah said, and you're living proof of it. 2 years after that October evening, Marcus attended a fundraiser for the shelter. Sarah had helped organize it, and the room was filled with women who'd found their way back to themselves, who'd discovered they were stronger than they'd ever imagined. As he watched them laugh and share their stories, he thought about the randomness of kindness, how a simple decision to stop and help had rippled outward in ways he never could have predicted. Emma tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, Sarah says I can help serve dessert. Is that okay? That's perfect, sweetheart, he said, watching his daughter run off with the kind of confidence and compassion that would have made her mother proud. Later, as the event wound down, Sarah found him by the coat rack. She was holding his old navy jacket, the one he'd given her that night. I carry this in my car now, she said, just in case I see someone who needs it more than I do. Paying it forward, like you said. Marcus felt his eyes sting with unexpected tears. This was what Jennifer had meant. This chain of compassion, this refusal to let the world's hardness win. That's perfect, he said. That's exactly perfect. Because in the end, that's all any of them could do. See the person shivering in the cold. Offer what warmth they had to give. And trust that kindness, like light, multiplies when it's shared. One jacket, one moment of humanity. One life saved, which then saved another and another, creating a ripple that would extend far beyond anything Marcus could see standing in that parking lot on a cold October evening. Sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin with the smallest gestures. Sometimes saving someone else is how we save ourselves. And sometimes a single dad offering his jacket to a stranger is exactly the hero both of them needed.